Wow, you move so well.
Hey,
안녕하세요.
안녕하세요. It's very nice to meet you, Erica.
Nice to meet you. Wow, you
Uh,
move very smoothly, like
uh,
the.
I stayed in Seoul for a very long time.
Oh,
Uh,
nice,
I-
nice.
so I
Great.
stayed in Seoul for quite a while, and Erica, I've always been a fan of your show. By the way, I've been in crypto since 2012, and when you
Wow.
started coming out with YouTube content 4 years ago, I used to watch your show quite a bit.
Oh, thank you so much. It means a lot to me. And wow, 2012. That's quite a long time ago. So you're much more 선배 than I am. You're more
No,
senior.
not at all. It's been such a, I mean, it's been like a blink of the eye, right? I mean, when you
Mhm.
take a look at how fast the space has grown and how fast mainstream adoption has come,
True.
it's just simply amazing.
Absolutely. It's been quite a roller coaster ride for all of us. But yeah, I mean, so thank you so much for, being here and like, promoting the show and yeah, really appreciate the shout out
Yeah,
as well.
I mean, I want as many people to follow you as possible, my friend. So, given the fact that I'm riding a tiny bit high on NFT photography right now, I mean,
Mhm.
a lot of these people are new into the space, and I think it's essential that they have someone who knows what the space is about, and the Erica show is perfect for that. So, hopefully through all of the Twitter posts, a lot more people will start to follow and to get and to engage with Crypto Soul. I think it's amazing what you're doing again.
Thank you so much. Oh, wow. Yeah, I mean, let's kind of dive in. I mean, we started off a little bit more, I guess, more natural than previous episodes, which is great for me because I usually have like a, intro session, but that's okay. And I think we had a really nice intro right now. So why don't we go ahead with episode 43? And we are, of course, joined by the famous NFT collector, WhaleShark. And I love the background, like it's very nature friendly. But yeah, could you give us an intro of yourself for people who might not know who you are? And, can you tell us what you do in this space? Yeah, as an intro.
Absolutely. So I go by the pseudonym WhaleShark. I've been in crypto since 2012. That was the very first time that I bought my first Bitcoin. Was fortunate enough to, between 2012 and 2015, to actually be taking half of my salary every single month and using that to buy Bitcoin. I was totally enamored with the concept of decentralized finance. But something magical happened in 2015 because after holding Bitcoin for about 3 to 4 years and seeing it back then peak at a market cycle, essentially what I decided to do was take all of that Bitcoin and convert it into Ethereum. So
Oh.
in 2015, I'm not a maximalist of BTC, ETH, or any coin in particular. I'm very much more a use case maximalist. And when I saw the opportunities that Ethereum had and what we're seeing is culminating today with decentralized finance and NFTs and all of this amazing stuff, it made perfect sense to change all of my BTC into ETH. Essentially just continued to buy Ethereum for the next 2 years, rode up the bear and the bull cycles. And in 2019, having this large reserve of Ethereum, really wanted to understand, hey, what's the next new big thing?
Mhm.
Come July or August 2019, and I actually did this while I was sitting down in my home office in Ilsan. I actually found out about this amazing project called Gods Unchained, which was a digital trading card collectible game.
Oh my gosh. Wow. That goes way back. Wow. It's
Way
amazing.
back. Fell in love with it. And because when I was younger, I just used to love collecting, Dragon Ball Z cards, Magic the Gathering cards. It made perfect sense for me that when I saw, trading collectible card games on the blockchain, number one, the provenance is there. Number two, the scarcity is there. And number three, I don't need to have these large binders full of cards and worry about physical degradation, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Made perfect and utter sense. Bought my first few packs, ended up spending, I want to say about 3,000 ETH. Ended up spending about 3,000 ETH on Gods Unchained
Wow.
between August and October of 2019, and became one of the largest holders of digital assets from that perspective. Again, has worked out relatively well, not only because of the adoption of the game, but also because of the governance token airdrops in terms of gods or in terms of IMX. So again, looking back, while I did it for the love of the game and I did it for the love of the collectibles, has turned out to be very, very popular as well. So I think once you touch one NFT project, it literally becomes a rabbit hole and you fall down the rabbit hole, right? So Erica, my journey was, buy a lot of gaming cards, fell down the rabbit hole, bought a ton of crypto art or digital art as we know it today. I believe that we are the largest holders of Xcopy, Hackatao, as well as one of the largest holders of PAC, which are all selling in the 6, 7, 8 figures these days. And then after that, decided if I have all of this art, I don't have anywhere to put it, right? So this sort of investment thesis came in 2019, and I thought, I need to buy some metaverse land. So, so at the end of 2019, ended up becoming the largest holder of CryptoVoxels lands, and then after that, the second largest holder of Sandbox. So it's just been looking at the investment thesis of NFTs, looking at the use case of NFTs. And then after that, utilizing that knowledge to be able to understand where does the value chain lie. And then after that, just starting to invest in all these amazing projects.
Wow. It seems like your journey was very intuitively like a chain effect of, being intuitive. The judgment was really just sound. And I can really see the thought process there. Like you need the land, to put your art and, it just really makes sense. But what a judgment call. I mean, I think you made all the right calls.
Thank you, Erica. I mean, when you look at it, right? So, and I'll talk about social tokens in a tiny bit as well. But when you look at it, we're living in this digital environment where, I'm not reading a book anymore. I'm reading an ebook, right? I'm looking at online streaming. I'm surrounded by 8 different screens. I'm spending 16 hours a day in front of my computer. We are in a digital verse, or we are moving towards a metaverse. So my thought process when I started investing in digital art was, art is amazing, right? As a source of beauty, but why isn't digital art worth anything when we're living in a digital age? And this was just 2 years ago, right? Some of these prices that we've seen, like 69 million from Beeple, 100 million just recently from PAC with Merge. These prices were unheard of, and the main reason why we could never get there is because there was no way to prove the provenance, scarcity, and ownership of digital picture files, right? Sure. So it made total. I mean, like you said, chain event. I knew immediately that digital art was going to be the first domino to fall, and then after that, just thinking forward down the road a tiny bit. Once you have digital art, again, I got 8 screens here, but what happens if I have 100 pieces of art? I need to have somewhere where I can place 100 pieces of art, and I can't buy another 5 houses in Korea, right? It's not feasible. So why don't I buy metaverse land? And to that extent, I think just looking at the trends and just logically thinking through the progression of those trends, it's led to some pretty good or wise decisions in terms of long-term NFT investment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you being anonymous as well, that also plays a part in having a digital identity, and I think that is really cool. And I mean, just kind of going a little bit back on being anonymous and having this WhaleShark persona, I would say, is there a reason why you're anonymous, and is there a reason for the name itself? I think it's a great name, by the way, but can you also tell us of the history of that of your personal journey?
Would love to. And Erica, you're absolutely right. There are a gazillion people who want to know who WhaleShark is. I think probably about a year back ago, or a couple of months ago, one of my Korean hyungs, they sent me a YouTube, right? Because a couple of people know who WhaleShark is, right? But my hyung sent me a video and said, look, someone made a Korean video on you trying to speculate on who you actually were. They think you're actually Korean. So that's on YouTube. Okay. I haven't gone to see it recently. But I think the main reason why I remain anonymous or pseudonymous is simply because for safety and security reasons, right? being a very early investor in crypto, and then after that being, one of the, original whales in NFTs, you're talking about a portfolio size that started, and granted ETH was much lower back then, right?
Sure.
But you're talking about a portfolio size that started with $500,000 in investment and is now valued conservatively at, this is not even market floor pricing, this is previous sale pricing at $125 million, right? So it's essential to me that, myself and my surroundings are relatively secure. But at the same time, Erica, while some people do want to be famous or they do want to be influencers, I'd rather remain extremely low key. I say this quite a bit, but I really do enjoy. I mean, in Ilsan, right? You'll see me walk around a Home Plus in shorts, a tank top and slippers, right? You would have no idea that that's WhaleShark.
Yeah.
So, I think privacy is just something that money cannot buy, right? Mm-hmm. And in speaking with a lot of large NFT whales, they're all talking about hiring bodyguards, right? And I'm like, I'm so sorry you have that problem. So it's unfortunate, but that's the main reason why I remain anonymous. In terms of where the name stemmed from, I have a fascination with the duality or the dichotomy of human nature, right? So you have good, you have evil, you have beautiful, you have ugly. And, when you look from a financial standpoint, you have the whale and you have the shark. Essentially what happens is that the whale, again, makes huge movements with a swish of the tail. He can, buy out markets, sell out markets, right? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I think it's essential for good investors to remain lean like a shark, right? Because you do need to be able to smell the blood. And you do need to be able to know where those opportunities are. So the name actually stems from that thought process of the dichotomy of a financial or an investor.
Wow, that's so fascinating. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, I assumed that about, the duality part, but like, wow, the history and like, your whole philosophy is really clear. And I think, I try to dress like as a whale shark. I don't know, like, I don't know if it makes sense. I tried my best. But being anonymous, I think it really makes sense, especially in the crypto world. I feel exposed, to be honest. Like I'm seen everywhere. Like, and so maybe, I regret that, maybe I should have started like you, started like anonymous like you. But
Erica, I think, again, I think there is a lot of, there's a lot of benefits, right, to being in the public eye, right? Mm-hmm. The opportunities that open up. Again, all of those things come by revealing your identity to the public. For me, I'm very fortunate to be in this situation where NFTs and crypto were actually, again, they were side hobbies, and they continue to be side hobbies for me. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, I really don't want to walk to McDonald's and try to go buy a Big Mac and someone has to stop me and ask me about NFTs, right? Oh. So and I don't know if that's happened to you. I'm sure it has. I know how popular your show is actually with the Korean community. But yeah, I do enjoy the private life.
Yes, absolutely. Speaking of side hobbies, I mean, I'm also curious about your background, like before crypto, like BC, mm-hmm. And how'd you get interested or just get exposed to this whole crypto space in 2012, which was very early, by the way. So yeah, I'd love to hear your Sure. Do you have another job now, or just curious about that?
Gotcha. So no worries. So I'm actually British. You can't tell from my accent. So I'm actually British. I've made this public already. I'm actually a British-born Chinese. So I'm a British-born Chinese. I am Asian. A lot of people assume that from my avatar and my accent that I'm not Asian. I am actually Asian. Okay. I was educated in the States, but after that, actually went to work in the brand consulting industry. So I was in the brand consulting industry and marketing for about 12 years. Worked in the US, Japan, Taiwan, Korea, China, Hong Kong, all over the place. And then after that, actually left after helping sell that company to a major private equity firm. My entry into Bitcoin in 2012 actually came after reading a article on Wired about Bitcoin. And, I was just looking through that article and thinking, hey, maybe I should mine some Bitcoin, right? Should have done it, but should have done it. We all have regrets.
Yes, of course.
But yeah, I mean, back then I was still working for corporate. At some point in time, I decided to say, hey, I want to strike out and do something myself. So I partnered with some friends to actually build out an artificial intelligence company that I recently sold about 2 months ago. So that was a lot of fun as well.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's always really interesting to build up a company from scratch, and then after that, see that company leap to greater heights. But yeah, I mean, for the time being, I've started about 6 different startups. I actually also own a startup in Seoul. I actually do own a startup in Seoul. Wow. And for my Korean employees who are actually looking at this, or my Korean associates who are watching this, WhaleShark says hello. But yeah, it's been amazing. And, over the past 5 years, 3 successful exits, 3 projects ongoing, some in traditional finance. One of the projects that I'm actively managing, which is the whale community, still ongoing. And then after that, also a digital fashion brand that's emerging as well.
Wow. Oh wait, I'm kind of over. This is too much information for me in one sitting. Wow, this is wow.
Erica, I get bored easily. So when I see an opportunity, I guess again there are some of us have this entrepreneurial instinct that when we see an opportunity within the market, it's very difficult for us to just sit back and not do anything about it. So blessed and cursed at the same time.
I totally understand what you're saying. You cannot really just sit back and relax and just see the train going. You just have to be on the pioneering side. I think that's what makes you attractive and fast moving, dynamic. So, and you really took the first mover advantage, to be honest. I think in collecting as well. I mean, I think you were one of the most well-known collectors since day one. So yeah, kudos to you for doing that.
Thank you, Erica. Back in the day. So I think about back in the day. I mean, to date, I have a total of 403,000 NFTs, roughly about 403,000 NFTs. Back in the day, so there are 2 things that I kind of reminisce about back in the day. The first thing is that it was so easy to win auctions, right? Because back in the day, the lack of attention to the space, the lack of the number of whales, and the lack of the number of, large investment groups, it made it so easy to collect the best NFTs in NFTverse, right? So that's probably one thing I miss about it. And, it was extremely exciting to be investing in something that no one had their eyes on yet. The second thing was, and, a lot of traditional art collectors are actually amazed by this, but back in the day, in 2019, I feel like an old man saying back in the day. But,
aren't we all?
Aren't we all now? 4 to 10 years in crypto will do that to you. But, in 2020, I could go through every single piece of digital art that was launched in the space. Literally every single morning, I would wake up and just a tidbit for your viewers. My beginnings in NFTs started in Korea, right? It's literally, I was working out of my home office, investing in NFTs, doing all this work. Granted, again, not professionally, just as a side hobby, but it was all in Korea. And, back then, every single day I'd get up at 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. I would spend half the day looking through every single piece of digital art that was launched in the space. Today, even if you gave me more than 24 hours in a day, I would not be able to go through the number of creations that are launched on a daily basis anymore. Yeah. So excited about how the space has grown, but the landscape is extremely different from what it was back in 2019 and 2020.
Yeah, I totally understand as well. You can't really grasp everything in one picture right now. I think there's too much going on. And I think a lot of the, we gathered some questions on Twitter, a lot of people were curious about what you look at, on a daily basis and what your major sources are, because I'm sure you have so much, information on board. And so people wonder what you majorly look at.
So I am relatively independent, right? So I know, and someone asked me this question earlier this week about the groups called the degens, right? Or the degenerates, right?
Yes.
The NFT degens. So, again, the group of NFT degens, again, are some very OG or original NFT collectors who join together to, purchase in or invest into NFT projects that they see have an immense amount of value. If you look at my wallet or the Whale community's wallet today, what you'll actually see is that we went the other way. And the reason why is because when I purchase an NFT, essentially I'm looking to hold it for a very long-term horizon. I'm looking to hold things for 10 years, for 20 years, for 30 years, even up to the end of my lifetime, whereby these NFTs will still be relevant and still be worth money. Mm-hmm. When you look at that from that perspective, the subset of NFTs that you can actually invest in are relatively small, right? No offense to all of the profile pic holders out there or PFP projects out there. They're interesting, they're fun, but can you guarantee me that in 20 years' time, a PFP project is going to retain the same amount of value as a piece of digital art? It's unproven. It's unproven in traditional history, right? And I could be totally wrong, right? I could be absolutely wrong. And PFPs all of a sudden, or profile pic projects all of a sudden become something new and amazing that revolutionizes the history of collection or collecting. But, again, after doing the appropriate amount of analysis, I'm more on the side of investing for the long-term horizon. Now, given that, I think the way that I choose, digital art or digital photography and the way that I choose projects is slightly different. CoinDesk was kind enough to interview me a couple of months back, and they released something called the WhaleShark's Playbook, the WhaleShark's Playbook to investing in NFTs. But I'll give your viewers just a very brief breakdown on how it goes. So when I look at an NFT project, the first thing that I really want to look at is the team, right? I guess due to the nature of the size of my investments, I am usually able to get in front of the team and understand who they are, what they do, how are they going to do it, and why they can achieve it, right? So I always say the best projects can be ruined by the worst teams, and the worst projects can be brought to light by the best teams. So I think still, even though we're in Web 3.0, decentralization, automation, all of these things, I think a team or people are still at the heart of the creation, right? So that's the first thing that's extremely important to me. The second thing that's important to me is, can I draw lessons from history and understand if something grew in value in the traditional world, then it's going to grow in value in the digital world. Why 3,000 ETH in Gods Unchained? Because we all know the growth of Magic the Gathering cards, from the 2000s all the way to now. A Black Lotus is $1 million, right? Or thereabouts, right? It continues to escalate in value, and as long as there's that collector base, it'll continue to go in value. Why the initial $300,000 investment into NBA Top Shots, which is now worth by itself about $25 million? Because when you look at sport cards, again, sport cards, sport collector cards. When you look at early sport collector cards from the 1900s, and we are now in the 2000s, only continue to escalate in value, right? So you need to be able to draw those traditional parallels. And again, extrapolating on my point on PFPs or profile pic projects, when you look at traditional history, it's very difficult to ascertain, what can I relate a profile pic to in the traditional world, and see that same value in the digital world, right? It's extremely difficult, which is why I stay away from most PFP projects. The third thing that I look at is the quality of the NFTs. So looking at what token standard they're using, looking at the quality of the design, looking at the token use case. So looking at the NFT use case. I'm a big fan of NFTs that have multiple use cases, because the more use cases you have, the more ability for that project to succeed. And finally, the last thing I look at is the amount of capital runway that a project has. So if a project has, again, $20 million, $30 million stashed in the bank, I know that they're going to be able to ride up and down the bear and bull markets, right? A single bear market is not going to kill that company. So those are roughly the points that I look at when I'm looking to invest in an NFT project.
Wow, thanks for sharing. Those are very thoughtful points. And yeah, I'm sure you have a lot of like experience that comes with it. So I think people should definitely check out the article, the playbook as well. Yeah. And, you know, in terms of collecting, I think you mentioned just previously that you really, you know, don't really look forward to like reselling. I mean, just you want to keep it for the, you know, until end of life, I would say, like 30 years. But I think people are curious about, you know, whether you look at also the pure, you know, enjoyment value from looking at an art, like, because I think the standards, some people, like for myself, like you know, when I bought some Korean NFT art recently, I thought it was beautiful and I thought it really reflected who I am. So I purchased it, for example. I didn't really look at like how it's going to resell or how I'm going to resell it at a higher value. I think like the pure entertainment value and just like for me, how it just like connects to me. I think that was more important for me. But I was curious about where, you know, you stand in your perspective, because I think, yeah, in terms of photography as well, I think that relates to it. And so it's curious about that. Yeah.
Erica, I'm very much in the same boat as you. I'm a collector first and an investor second. It just, again, it just happened that my collection, you know, it just happened so that the collection that I managed to assimilate together managed to get the amount of financial traction that it did. You know, for me, it's when I collect digital art or when I collect digital photography, it's all about the art. It's all about the expression. It's all about how historically significant or culturally significant that piece is. So I very much, again, I do say this very often, but I'm a collector first and an investor second. I mean, just backing that up, 403,000 NFTs collected over the last 2 years. We've only, and to date, and I'm talking about actually transacted sales, we've only sold one. We've only sold one. Wow. So, you know, I'm hoping to hold on to the collection for as soon as possible. We are known for having diamond hands in the space. But to your point, I mean, I love the artists that are emerging here, and you know, the relationships that you build with those artists is amazing. I have a favorite, you know, Korean artist as well, CS Lim, who actually integrates artificial intelligence into traditional Oriental landscape paintings. So essentially, what you'll see is CS Lim actually does this algorithm where he'll take a artificial intelligence algorithm, train it with over, you know, 20,000 or 30,000 pieces of traditional, you know, whether that be Korean, Japanese, or Chinese, you know, landscape paintings. And the algorithm will decide what the final outcome or what the best piece is from all of those 20 to 30,000 pieces. There's a strong amount of talent. I wish I could collect more from Korean artists as well. And I hope that a lot more Korean artists come into the space.
Wow. Oh, that's very interesting. Yeah, I should definitely check him out. But yeah, wow. Thank you for sharing that as well. In terms of, I mean, you mentioned about the emerging artists, and I think that's a really good point I wanted to really ask more about, is because like I think a lot of people on Twitter, I mean, I think a lot of aspiring NFT artists, like they come on Twitter, they try to showcase their work, and it's hard for them to, I mean, even at this point, I think this point is a little bit more mature than like 2 years back, right? So it's hard to really showcase what you have because there's so many competitors and like other artists. So in that sense, like, do you also look at emerging artists like in specific sometimes and just kind of look at like where they're hidden, for example, and like, because I think the name value or the artist history, for example, in the traditional art world, I think that also plays a part in kind of reflecting their history and like their references, right? So in that sense, like, where do you weigh in? I mean, it's hard to tell. It's hard to make it a percentage, but in your perspective, do you also look at both, or just, curious about your way of, evaluating, I guess.
So evaluating NFT projects, right, from an investment perspective, and evaluating art and photography are, again, two different subsets of, I guess, an analysis process. So why don't I break it down like this? So I'll give you my investment thesis for digital art and digital photography. And then after that, talk about some of the success cases within the space. When you're looking at digital art and digital photography, it's really not about the ROI, right? If you're in it to invest in art for the ROI, and very early on, like you said, in emerging artists, it's very difficult, very challenging, and pretty much impossible, right? I would say that the first thing I look at when it comes to art is really the theme of the art and the style of the art. I'll relate this back to NFT photography, since this is becoming such a hit with the community these days. Do I want to buy a landscape? Do I want to buy a portrait? Do I want black and white? Do I want composite photography? You really need to understand what gets your juices flowing. So you need to understand what type of genre you want to pick. The second thing you want to look at is really the theme of the work, right? I liken this back to, hey, if you're going to take, so let's talk about, one of my favorite photographers in the space is Ryosuke Kosuge, right? And he's known as RK. He's the professional photographer for KAWS and the professional photographer for, all these other celebrities. But the thing is, his themes are all timeless, right? When you look at his pieces, some of them are landscape, some of them are, street photography, some of them are portraits, but they're all timeless. So what you're looking for really is a theme that really resonates with you. If someone decided to take a photo of a banana taped to a wall, right? Like what we saw earlier on last year, I'm not going to buy it, right? Because it's not timeless, right? That theme is going to die out. So you really need to look at the theme as well. After that, you really need to look at the pursuit of perfection that an artist has. If you look at enough art, if you look at enough photography, you will see that the creative who actually created that piece really pursued the echelons of perfection, right? For photography, whether that's the composition, whether that's the lighting, whether that's the post-edit, all of these things, you're going to be able to see it instantly if you look at enough. So I really like, creatives who actually pursue perfection rather than minting anything and everything that they can, right? So I think that's important.
Yes.
And then after, I think the last thing, we would only use social media as a reference to understand whether or not that piece of art, that artist or that photographer has a mainstream following and a mainstream engagement. So going on to Instagram, going on to Twitter, and not looking at the numbers, but more so looking at the engagement levels that they have, because we all know that Twitter and Instagram followers can be bought. It's essential to look at the engagement, and I think from that perspective, again, you're going to be able to make some very good decisions. So, just recapping, the first thing again is making you love it, right? You have to love it. Number 2, looking at the genre. Number 3, looking at the theme. Number 4, looking at how perfect the works are. And then number 5, only using social media as a reference to understand, does it have mainstream acceptance or not? But given that, Erica, just within the week of my, 10 days within NFT photography, I bought tons of artists with a limited amount of social media following. I bought art, I bought creatives, whose pieces had been on OpenSea for 3 to 4 months without selling out. I think it is still relatively easy to catch a collector's eye as long as the work falls into the preference of that collector.
That is true. I think the collector really needs to resonate with the art. And recently, as you mentioned, you seem fascinated with photography. It's very clear on your Twitter account. So, what is it that fascinates you about this area? Is it one of those, I guess, like as you've seen, do you think it's undervalued? I think it should be more emphasized in this NFT field. Just curious about the story there.
Sure. I have not invested in another asset class of NFTs besides photography since Metaverse Land in 2020. So I think that can speak to how excited I am about NFT photography. So, again, I think just some of the principles I go by. Sometimes the best thing an investor can do is nothing, right? Until they actually find something that resonates with them. Yeah. But NFT photography really resonated with me for a couple of reasons. So I think the first reason why is because it shares the same DNA as digital art or crypto art, right? Mm-hmm. Why aren't pictures digital pictures worth as much as they should be? Simply because there is the lack of methodology to be able to ascertain the provenance, the scarcity, and the ownership, right? Mm-hmm. Where it came from, how many of them are there, and who owns it now. So NFT tokenization essentially makes that very available to photography, right? So I think it answers the base question. The second question that I would ask myself really is, is this time for market? Can NFT photography really be valued at something? And, when you look at Justin Aversano and his Twin Flame series, you're looking at a piece that sold for above $1 million, right? Mm-hmm. You're looking at pieces that regularly sell above $500,000. So I think the bull case for saying photography is worth something, not only stylistically, but also commercially, has already been proven. So that's a second reason why I think NFT photography is a thing. The third reason why I think NFT photography is a thing is because when you and I go on the internet, and whether we're clicking on thumbnails, whether we're clicking on articles, whether we're interacting with our family, whether we're interacting with our friends, photos sometimes are the predominant medium in which you and I communicate and socialize with people, right? Mm-hmm. People have disagreed with me, but I would say that photography and photographs are probably the most important and the most pervasive medium within the internet today, right? Especially with the rise of Instagram. So if everyone is looking at all these digital photos all the time, digital photography should be worth something, right? Mm-hmm. And I would, just capping off on a last point, the digital photography market has always lagged behind the digital art market, right? Yeah. I think it might be more difficult to collect digital photography in its physical form. So again, in a digital age where everyone has a camera phone, most people have a dedicated camera, it makes sense for me that, NFT photography is not something that can only accrue value within the NFT space itself, but I think that potential value is amplified by the fact that it's going to revitalize the entire fine art photography segment in totality. So that's kind of my take in terms of why I've been going so bullish on NFT photography. Have probably spent over the last 10 days, I've probably spent close to $1 million on NFT photography so far.
Wow, that's amazing. I agree with you that, photography is definitely, just taking photos on a personal level, I really emphasize on taking photos because I think they're the only things that last, to be honest, to go back to your memories. And I think, I just religiously take photos and put it on my Instagram, but, and that does mean something, to be honest. I really do resonate with you. Yeah.
Erica, think about it. How does a common person use NFT photography? Again, you have all of your you have all of your photographs. One day Instagram is going to die. Right? It's beyond a doubt that something is going to cycle out. Imagine, for this Christmas and you had an amazing photograph with all of your friends or your families and you tokenized it on a blockchain, edition of 20, sent one NFT to each person that you were celebrating with. It's the perfect gift, right? Wow. So I think there's so many ways that this is going to happen, right?
Wow, that's a good idea. I don't know if you know, but there was a dying platform called Cyworld in Korea. Maybe you might not know about this, but it had I put millions of photos on that platform and it died away. So I think a lot of Koreans were devastated to see their life, going away. So, so I think that really Instagram, as you mentioned, I think that can be also maybe a future unfortunate event.
What happens when, again, I do know about Cyworld. I think that was back in the day when I was actually playing Ghost Stop on Daum.
Tom, yeah.
No, yeah, I used to play a lot of ghost stuff on Tom. Sorry, side note. But yeah, I mean, Instagram at some point of time, it might not be tomorrow, it might not be 5 years from now, and it might not be 20 years from now, is going to say, look, this business model is unsustainable. We're going to shut down, right?
Yeah.
And sorry, because all of your photos are on our hosted servers, please migrate those photos as soon as possible. If not, you're going to lose it all, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's totally feasible. And same thing with happening with Cyworld. So I lost all my photos there. So
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. You said you spent a lot of money on recent NFT photography, but can you tell us an example of some recent collections that you've made that resonates with you the most? I mean, something that kind of clicks to you. Just an example of something that really, just curious about that.
Absolutely. So I mentioned firstly just now, I mean, one of my favorite photographers in the space, and really one of my favorite photography genres, if you can call it a genre, has been Japanese photography. I've collected a lot of amazing Japanese photography talent. Again, one of my favorites being RK or Ryosuke Kosuge, given the fact that, his mastery over light and the photography community has very much educated me on what exactly is photography. Essentially, it is the mastery of light, right?
Yeah.
RK, I mean, his works just speak volumes, whether it's a subject matter, whether it's his application of light when taking the photo, or whether it's his editing, right, after taking the photo. It's just utter and complete perfection when you look at framing, when you look at composition, when you look at color grading. It just blows your mind. But given that, I would say probably the project that has stood out most to me is actually a project by someone called Mike Yamashita, who is actually one of the most famous National Geographic photographers in our generation. I mean, in Instagram, he is listed among the top 5 or top 10 photographers on Instagram today. And, when I came into the space, I was fortunate enough to see that many people hadn't recognized that, right? So his series is called 4 Seasons of Juzai-go. And Juzai-go is actually a beautiful, a beautiful naturally preserved place in China. And Mike Yamashita is the only foreigner to have the largest database of those photos within that area. And essentially what he did was he spent a couple of months there taking photos. And just to mention this, the background that you see behind me is actually Seasons of Juzai-go number 24. So this is an example of one of his photos.
Wow.
The beautiful thing. Okay, go ahead.
No, I remember in the beginning, I said it was beautiful. So yeah.
Thank you. Oh, you have good taste. Erica, you got to start collecting some NFT photography. But the beautiful thing that Mike did was he not only tokenized the photos, what he did as well was that he included rarity traits in his photos. So essentially, when you open any of his photos and when you go to the properties or the metadata that's installed or that is on the blockchain, essentially he's created rarity traits by looking at the camera that he used, the exposure, the focal length, the shot angle, the season, the ISO, right? So this guy literally, what he did, I think he revolutionized the way that we're looking at photography forever. Because again, he's incorporating that metadata into his tokens as well. So I thought that was an amazing thing that happened. I was fortunate enough to come in at a point whereby all of his most expensive photos were still available. I swept the floor, calling myself Web 3.0 janitor nowadays, but I swept the floor. And the floor on that collection moved from 2 ETH to 11.5 ETH, where it is right now over the course of 5 days.
Seriously, wow, you're a benevolent janitor. I don't know, like, what should I say?
I'm a very thorough janitor.
Wow, that's amazing. Wow, I should definitely look at his work as well. I mean, I've seen a lot on Clubhouse and the, beginning of 2021. I mean, there was the Clubhouse boom and a lot of photographers came on Clubhouse. And so I got a chance to really communicate with them. And I think they were navigating into the space back then. I think during the, previous months, they were really just escalating dynamically. So yeah, it's really interesting to see like how much they have showcase and kind of learn about this space. I think it just takes a lot of learning process to kind of sink in for the artists, right? So wow, and I think
I
you
agree
really
with
help
you.
that.
It's a learning process, and I remember being in those Clubhouse days, 2021. It's a shame that it died out. It's Twitter Spaces now, right?
Yeah, I know.
It's a shame.
It was fun.
But it was fun. I mean, it was like a 24-hour NFT party for 3 months. Erica, I can tell you after that, literally for 2 months, I did not want to touch my social media account.
Same.
I didn't touch it at all. So this rumor started going around, I think from April to June, is that, WhaleShark is dead and the whale community leadership is hiding it, right?
Really?
So I actually had to send out a tweet saying proof of life and sent a photo of my hand or something like that.
I have seen it actually.
that was proof of life because everyone was saying he's dead. No, it was because, and I think you'll know this, right? And you being a public figure, being in the public, it takes a lot out of you, right?
It does.
Whether that by voice or whether by face or video, it takes a lot out of you. And I mean, after that, I mean, again, April to May, just said not touching my social media anymore, not posting anything. Good decision in hindsight. But again, it's about pacing yourself. But to your point, a lot of photographers came in. I think we are only seeing the NFT photography boom coming in now due to the amount of photographers that are coming in as well, that continue to come in. So as a collector and as an investor, first mover advantage is great, but it's not everything because there will always be another creator or another creative that comes into the space. And if you've spent all your money, you can't move to the next big thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a good point that you mentioned. I think there are, waves of new artists gonna, appear in the new scene. So it's not too late for any collector to come in and, share their, buy their collection. So yeah, that's a very good point.
Never at all. I mean, when you look at how late, and I'm using my avatar hands don't move, but I'm doing air quotes. When you look at how late Beeple came in, right? Beeple came in probably about, Beeple came in probably 8 to 9 months after the crypto boom. And, again, if you had spent all of your money on other crypto or NFTs back then, you wouldn't have had the funds to invest in Beeple, right? So, there are a couple of NFT photographers that I'm holding out for as well. Potential NFT photographers that I'm holding out for. There are particular genres. And I think as we move forward and as this space continues to build more momentum, what we're going to see is even more talent influx into the space. And that will provide additional credibility for the space to move forward.
Yeah, I mean, speaking and kind of piggybacking on that, I think photography is definitely something that you're very heavily interested and passionate about. Is there, how do you see the, NFT space in general moving forward, not only including photography, but also, other spaces? I think, are there any, other fields that you feel like are underestimated or not like exposed yet that you're looking forward to? Yeah, just curious.
Absolutely. There are a bunch. So I'll talk about what's happening in the shorter term, and after I'll talk about what's happening in the longer term. But on a shorter term basis, anything that is digital can be tokenized, right? So some of the things that I'm looking forward to, for example, and I think some of them are actually already coming to fruition. Blau, so he released this platform called WhaleShark, and Blau's a good friend of mine. Seeing the tokenization and NFT tokenization of music, right? Is something that I'm looking very much forward to seeing it gain mainstream attention. The second thing is media. Is publications, right? So how do you take NFTs and tokenize books? Because right now, again, when you buy a book on Kindle, essentially you don't really own that book, right? That book resides on Amazon's, central server, and you're able to reference that data file, right? why can't collecting ebooks be as tangible as collecting an actual book? And why shouldn't first editions of famous books in digital form be as valuable as physical books in first edition, right? I've seen some amazing concepts revolving around publication, so I do think that that's going to happen. The third thing that I'm looking forward to is something that I only just recently started tweeting about because, again, I had been collecting for the last 2 weeks or so. Avatars, right? Not PFPs, avatars. So as we're moving into the metaverse, you're going to want to have, a face and a 3D model to be able to navigate through the metaverse. Artifacts Clone X is a perfect example of how you can own your own identity in the metaverse, and it's just not a JPEG, right? It's an actual 3D model that you can actually use, right? So, Erica, I mean, the next time you and I talk, you might be using a Clone X avatar, right? I have a cartoon-based figure over here, but I may be using an artifact avatar as well, right? A Clone X avatar as well.
Let's do it.
So I think there are tons of things. In the longer term, though, Erica, we are undoubtedly going to go through, booms and busts, right? As NFTs gain more predominance. NFT is the word of the year, right? Stipulated by several dictionaries. As we look into the future, my ideal circumstance is that NFTs just become the golden standard of what digital assets should be, right? And very similar to the way that, you and I talk about the internet today, you and I are not talking about TCP IP protocols, right? You and I just say we say we're connected through the internet, and what does the internet do? It connects us. In the future, we're no longer going to be talking about the term NFTs, but just saying digital assets, what does the blockchain do, or what does NFTs do? It just makes sure that I really own that digital thing, right? So I'm hoping towards that mainstream adoption. I think we will see some immense movement in the market. OpenSea just announced their plans for an IPO. Coinbase, with a backline of 2 million users who want to use their NFT marketplaces coming in. That wave of adoption is coming. We are going to go boom and bust. But again, if you're holding for the long term, it shouldn't worry you as much.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, there's so much to talk about, but I do want to also talk about your Whale community, because it's in your passion about social tokens, because that's one of my passions as well. I'm very fascinated about what you're doing and how you created that community. So can you kind of give us a thorough background on how it came through and how it's building and what it's used for? Yeah, just very fascinated with that.
Absolutely. I think, again, making predictions on the market has always been relatively fun for me, to throwing things on the wall and seeing what sticks. And social tokens for me, I think, is probably the next big thing. Social tokens are going to be the next big thing. So let me give you a little bit of history on Whale, and I'll talk about social tokens a tiny bit. But Whale is the largest actual social token in the entire world. We have about 30,000 members worldwide. And essentially how it came about was that, between 2019 to 2020, as I was collecting all these NFTs, I really lacked a cohesive community to talk about NFTs and to share my collection with. So what I decided to do was I decided to take my Whale, all of the crown jewels of the NFTs that I had collected, and use it to underpin a social currency or a social token called Whale. Right? So that's why I can give you numbers like $125 million valuation and whatnot, because we have a professional organization behind it. Now, given that, essentially we started off with 500 members at 15 cents a coin. Today, it is a fully diluted market cap of $200 odd million. And, again, we've grown from 500 members to about 30,000 members worldwide. Essentially what you can do with the Whale. So I didn't want to run afoul of SEC regulations. So we do have some virtual cables that we tie in to see the value of the vault affect the token itself. So I'll get that out of the way and talk about it roughly, but I want to talk more about the use case of it. But essentially what we do is whenever we sell an asset from the vault, we use 50% of the profit to buy more NFTs, and we use 50% of the profit to buy back Whale from the open market. So we use this sort of a mechanism to be able to ensure that we have Whale to continue to distribute to the community, but at the same time also give that, virtual cable tie-in between the vault and the price. What you can do with the Whale token is, number one, we have gated access to information. So we have a lot of streams, we have a lot of interviews. I think we do probably about 8 interviews every single week. And a lot of those interviews, Erica, I started off with a team of 2. I have a team of 25 right now.
Wow, that's amazing.
So it's grown quickly. So gated interviews, when some platforms allow for the rental of NFTs, like crypto voxels or like crypto motors, if you hold a certain amount of Whale, will allow you to rent those assets for free. You can do liquidity mining, right? We probably have the highest level of liquidity for a social token, at about, I think it's about, $13 to $15 million on Uniswap at the moment. And then after that, again, we have free airdrops and all of these other sort of things that really promote growth in the community. So why do I think social tokens are the next big thing? It's because right now, when you look at, influencers like yourself, I mean, is there a way for Erica to be able to motivate and to incentivize her community to follow more, to share more, to engage with Erica more? I think the tool set that you have in Web 2.0 is relatively limited. Yeah. However, if the Erica show decided to create the Erica coin, right? And you said, all right, everyone who has been following me for the last 4 years, you're going to get 10 Erica coin. Everyone who has been following me for the last 2 years, you're going to get 5 Erica coin, right? Yeah. Basically immediately you'll jumpstart a community that, revolves around your social token. And, you can incentivize your viewers by saying, hey, let's say, hey, the mission for this week is, again, make sure you watch this week's video. After that, make sure you share it with your friends. We're going to be able to track that. And then after that, all of you guys will get 1 Erica token each if you fulfill your mission, right? Mm-hmm. Slowly as people start to accumulate the Erica token, you'll start to see your people start to pay each other in Erica token, right? If someone made let's say, Erica, you had a Discord channel, right? And someone made an amazing message and people wanted to offer their thanks for that information. All of a sudden, you'll see people giving someone 1 Erica, right? For providing that information. So again, I don't think that there has ever been a better way today to actually motivate, bootstrap, incentivize, and to engage a community, right? Particularly as community leaders and influencers, it really increases the loyalty and the stickiness that your audience has with you.
I'm taking notes, so.
Erica, I can't wait. I cannot wait to see an Erica token. This is going to be awesome.
So I think your words right now might, really be like, it really might come true. So I'm really taking notes. You're one of my benchmarking, cases. You're really inspiring. So yeah, wow.
Erica, I mean, another thing, Erica, if you decided, another idea, if you decide to create NFTs, you could say, and to drive demand, you could say, all right, anybody with 10 Erica tokens in their wallet, I'm going to drop all of you NFTs today, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's simply amazing what you can do with Web 3.0. And, part of being an innovator, part of being an entrepreneur, and part of being, a leading voice in the space is just making sure that you're always on top of those trends. If it works out, that's great. If it doesn't work out, it was an awesome experience, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, community leaders, builders like myself, I think it's been really hard to bootstrap really like on an engaging level with, I think token economy or social tokens really do play a part in, as you said, making this community sticky and like make it last long. So it's a very good method.
Absolutely, Erica. And I can tell you a lot, and my preference for, again, social tokens is using Roll, right? So tryroll.com. They're an amazing group of people. I mean, when you look at some of the top social tokens, even Hackatow's Mork, I think they started off at like 50 cents and it's at like $11 right now, right? Simply because, they had the infrastructure to be able to deliver it. But I mean, big things are coming for social tokens. not to reveal too much, but how about using Whale to buy your groceries at Walmart, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's coming. It is coming, and you know, I think every single influencer should be looking at it.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, wow. Your idea bank. Thanks so much for sharing.
My pleasure.
And wow. I think this is one of the longest interviews so far.
I'm really enjoying it. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. One of the comments that I saw on Twitter that was I think interesting and I think worth reflecting on is like speaking for like the female artist community, the Asian artist community, and I'm sure you pay a lot of attention to the Asian artist community, but in general, it's difficult for Asian artists to step up and to really like engage because I think the language barrier is definitely there, and also yeah, just in terms of like the difference in culture. So and because lack of uses in Twitter, it's hard to. For me, I engage with Twitter, but I think for a lot of the artists, it's hard because they've never used Twitter in Korea, for example. So how can we highlight these artists and, you know, what are some good methods that you kind of saw in previous years or months that really help them to step forward?
So firstly, I will fully agree with the comments in Twitter as well as what you're saying right now, Erica. There is an underrepresentation of demographics when it comes to the creative economy and the creator economy in general. You know, I mean, just breaking it down into two different segments. I mean, from an Asian perspective, you know, I would say there are a lot of Asian investors, but there are not a lot of Asian creators. True. When I think about, and Erica, you might know this, when you think about the top investors in the space, a lot of them are Asian, right?
True.
Right? Which I was surprised by, right? I've been staying in Hong Kong for the last 2 years, and I met quite a few of them. I was surprised. So I still think that underrepresentation in Asian arts or just Asian, you know, Asian styled arts or Asian artists in general is something that needs to be taken a look at. As a collector, the main thing that I can do is, again, the first thing is, as a collector, I can purchase their art, right? The biggest compliment that you can give to an artist is to purchase their artwork. Yep. And, you know, I think that has really put, for the time being, right, from what I've been collecting so far, Japanese artists on the roadmap. Because when you look at some of the Japanese artists that you see today, like whether that's RK, who is sold out, whether that's Junya Watanabe, who does this amazing, cool, wow, cyberpunk photos of Tokyo, sold out as well. Yukari Mitsuya, right? Who's, you know, again, not only a wonderful person, but again, travels around Japan and uses her soft palette photography to create something that's very much more feminine, but also very much more fantastical, almost sold out as well, right? So I think as collectors, what we can do is mainly provide, I guess, pay them the biggest compliment by collecting their works. The second thing, though, I think is more important. You know, as a collector, I would hate to be guilt bought, right? Or I would hate to buy something you know, simply because, you know, you know, I need to have, and I'm trying to put this in a politically correct way, right? I would hate to be forced to buy something, right? Right. But I think more important than, you know, buying, right, in terms of allowing these artists to flourish, is to provide equal reach opportunity, right? It's not about equal purchase. It's about equal reach opportunity. It's about understanding that we have underrepresentation. And then after that, making sure that we are consciously providing the platform for these voices to flow, right? So from what I can do, right, having the Whale community and having the largest general NFT collector and creator community is we have Whale FM, which is what we use in terms of our video interviews. You know, put a priority and allow these people to have more opportunity to speak until parity and equality is reached, right? It is not possible to get parity and equality in sales because, again, that is due to the preference of the collector, right? Sure. I purchase blindly. I don't, you know, again, I don't, the word isn't I don't care, I don't mind, right? Whether you're male, female, something in between, whether you're Asian, whether you're African American, whether you're Caucasian, I buy the art because of the art, right? Yeah. Or I buy the photography because of photography. But, again, going back to your point, making sure that these underrepresented communities have an equal voice, right? I think is the best thing that we should do as stewards of the Web 3.0 space.
Yeah, creating more opportunities, I think that, and spaces for them to feel secure and more like confident. I think that was one of the benefits of Clubhouse. Remember those rooms where we had like the Korea NFT artist rooms, and I was able to like translate their words into English, and I think that really, hopefully, that helped to kind of make the voice a little bit more louder and more, I guess, more easy to communicate and to come across. So, making those more available to the community. I think that's what we can do, you can do, and I can do. So,
this is Web 3.0, right? Everyone is identity blind. I mean, if I might say that, right? If you and I weren't speaking on video, and if we were having a phone call and I hadn't known you previously, I wouldn't know what nationality you were, right? Clubhouse, again, you could tell if someone was male or female, but you get on Twitter, you don't know what the gender or nationality or sometimes even the political persuasion, right, of a person is, right? It becomes identity blind, which is I'd stand up and applause that, simply because we should be buying work for the work that speaks itself. And again, someone actually put this really well. You buy the photography, you buy what is in front of the camera and not what is behind the camera, right?
Oh, that's true.
I thought that was a wonderful comment by one of my followers.
Oh yeah, that really totally hits the core. Thank you for sharing your insight on that. Last question. It's been a long interview for you, but given your experience during since 2012, and what will the next 5 years will look like? I mean, there's COVID and everything, but in general, in the crypto space and in NFT space as well. What do you see in the next 5 years? And also in your personal or professional vision, what is your ultimate vision?
Wonderful question. And I've absolutely loved every moment of this interview, Erica. I mean, this has flowed so well, and I know it's like speaking to an old friend. So why don't I break it up a tiny bit? So in terms of the crypto space, essentially what I see, and I think everybody sees, is when you look at the economic underlying factors of the world right now, we're in a very difficult place, right? Essentially what you see countries printing money to be able to subsidize the effects of COVID, right? We've already seen rampant inflation numbers coming out of the US as well as other countries within the world. And how long can you raise the debt ceiling before it becomes unsustainable, right? So I think the inflationary aspect of fiat currency is going to continue, which is going to push further attention onto mainstream cryptocurrencies, predominantly BTC and ETH, right? When you look at the narrative behind BTC as being the digital gold of a new era, I fully subscribe, and I actually own BTC as well. You'll see that I'm not a maximalist of anything. So I own BTC. And, again, I think the narrative of digital gold is a very apt one, right? When you look at the narrative behind ETH as digital oil or digital gas, and I've been saying this since 2016, because it runs the world's computer, right? It's not only, digital oil. It is also, digital cash, right? So I think what you'll see is that narrative for Ethereum is going to continue. I do expect the gap between Bitcoin and Ethereum to close a tiny bit during this cycle. And I am relatively optimistic in seeing a flippening, right? And I know some of your BTC holders are not going to be very happy to hear that. But just simply because of the amount of use case and developer size going into the Ethereum network, I do see a flippening. It might not be next year. It might not be 2 years later, but I think it is imminent. I also see the rise of CBDCs, right? I think everyone has caught on to central bank digital currencies. China releasing the digital yuan is almost there. the US managing stable coins and taking a look at the way that that's approaching, I do think that in totality, we are going to be approaching a cashless economy. So I am very, very bullish on the crypto scene as a whole, and particularly bullish on the fact that we are going to see a lengthening of this cycle. So so for those who are listening in, 2012 OG, 2015 OG, not selling anything for the time being, right? So that's what's happening in crypto. In terms of NFTs, again, I think what we're going to see is we're going to see a large amount of investment into more companies. But given that the money is flowing so freely into both NFTs and NFT companies, I think we are imminent for a correction at some point in time. Again, when a market gets overheated, and I don't like using this word, but when the market gets overheated, you see a lot of stupid money. And stupidity often needs to get flushed out. So we will probably see a lot of projects collapse over the next 12 months. But at the same time, you're going to see mainstream adoption by companies, traditional companies, start to enter the space. I personally cannot wait till Niantic and Pokemon come in, because that's a perfect project for NFTs. So I think those are all coming. And then after that, I think in the larger run, to the point that I made earlier on, at the end of the day, the biggest problem that crypto needs to address is onboarding, right? You cannot onboard an entire world population and expect every single one of them to know how to use MetaMask, knows how to cancel a transaction, knows how to speed up a transaction. The barriers to entry for crypto and NFTs right now is a little bit high, simply because you require that level of education, right? Okay. So in 5 years, what I hope to see is, and I think this will be resolved within the next 2 years, right? Is a smoother onboarding process where people who buy, own, and trade digital assets don't need to know anything about the blockchain. And I think that is coming soon. And in 5 years, Erica, if we're sitting here again, I think you and I, we're not going to be calling it NFTs. We're going to just be calling them digital assets.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's a very nice overview of the future. And I also agree, because so many Korean game companies are moving forward with their own NFT projects. And, it's been really seriously being reviewed. And, I think it'll be executed within the next year or so. So I'm very excited for the future of Korean NFTs, game NFTs as well, and art in general, because there are so many talented Korean artists sprouting up, and they're, I think they're going to NFT NYC, and I think it's been very interesting to see their movements recently. So yeah, very happy to share that in the next, maybe in my next podcast or something. But yeah, thank you so much for an exciting interview. It was a memorable experience. I look forward to seeing you in person, hopefully later on, without, revealing our identities. Maybe we can come across sometime. But thanks so much. It's been an absolute pleasure, Erica. I again have thoroughly enjoyed every single moment of it. I think again what you're doing for the space in terms of dedicating the time and resource to educate everybody and to provide timely information is something that only all of us can aspire to do. Very bullish on the Korean NFT community. Thank you for those who have reached out to me over the previous months. And Erica, we'll continue to be a huge fan of your show and everything that you're doing. Thank you so much. 예, 감사합니다. 수고해요. 감사합니다. 오, 수고하세요.